They put my seat next to the trash cans. My own sister looked me in the eye and said, "Guess you don't count." I stood up and walked out without a word. Minutes later, a scream cut through the music, and her perfect world shattered into a million pieces. My name is Amber Hayes, and this is the story of how I finally got my revenge. The hallway smelled like lilies and bleach, a weird mix of something beautiful and something meant to clean up a mess. I guess that's where I fit in. I could hear the DJ inside the ballroom, counting down to my sister Laya's first dance. The sound was muffled, like I was listening to a party from another planet. My mother adjusted her pearls, not looking at me. My father stared at a spot on the wall, like it was the most interesting thing he'd ever seen. I tightened my grip on the gift I'd wrapped so carefully the night before. It was a small silver box, tied with a perfect ribbon. I had spent hours picking it out, thinking maybe this time would be different. I smoothed down my wine-colored dress, took a deep breath, and chose silence. No argument, no tears. They didn't deserve to see me cry. I stood up from the small folding table they called my seat, turned my back on the closed ballroom doors, and walked out into the sharp Vermont air. 5 minutes later, the music inside stopped, and a scream cut the room in half. But to understand that scream, you have to understand how I ended up in that hallway in the first place. It was a lifetime in the making. My sister Laya had chosen the lakeside resort for her wedding because it had what she called European charm. It was really just a fancy way of saying it was expensive and looked good in photos. The kind of place where people took pictures just to prove they'd been invited. The glass ballroom overlooked the lake, and it was strung with white orchids and floating candles. Every table inside shimmered under giant chandeliers. And mine, according to the seating chart held by the wedding coordinator, was a folding chair set up in the hallway, right next to the service doors where the staff took out the trash. I had driven up alone from Boston. A 3-hour trip spent replaying my mom's last text in my head. "Please, Amber, no drama today. It's Laya's day." That was all I ever was to her. An instruction, a warning label. Don't make noise. Don't take up space. Don't remind anyone there's another daughter. Growing up, we were the cliché you see in movies. Laya was the golden child. She had ribbons in her hair and trophies on the mantle. I had report cards with good grades that no one ever looked at. When Laya cried, someone came running to rescue her. When I fixed a broken toy or solved a problem on my own, I got a pat on the head and was told I was so independent. My mom said I was the easy one. My dad said I was low maintenance. They both meant the same thing. I was convenient. I didn't need anything, so they didn't have to give me anything. Not their time, not their attention, and definitely not their love. I was the background character in the story of Laya's life. The last time I saw my whole family together was Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I remember the house smelled like burnt pie crust and lemon cleaner. Laya was in Portugal with her new boyfriend, and for once the air in our house felt light. It was peaceful. My mom asked me to grab an old photo album from her vanity drawer, but when I opened the drawer, I saw her little brown journal. The edges were soft from years of use. I was curious, so I flipped through it. My heart sank a little more with every page. Every entry began the same way. Laya's first day of kindergarten. Laya's favorite meal is spaghetti. Laya got her college acceptance letter. There were hundreds of pages. Not a single one had my name. Not my birthdays, not my graduation, nothing. When I asked my mom about it later, she just smiled like it was a silly question. "You never needed that kind of attention, honey," she said. "You were always just fine." That night, I learned the difference between being lost and being erased. I felt erased. I thought about that brown journal as I walked toward the ballroom on Laya's wedding day, my heels clicking on the shiny marble floor. Through the giant glass doors, I could see them all posing for photos. My mom in a champagne-colored silk dress, my dad straightening his tie, and Laya glowing in her big white gown. She looked over her shoulder, saw me standing there, and smiled. It was the same kind of smile people give to store clerks they'll never see again, empty and polite. The wedding coordinator, a woman with a tight bun and a clipboard, intercepted me. "You're Miss Hayes?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah." Her polite smile faded when she found my name on her list. Her eyes flickered with something, pity maybe. "You're listed for hallway seating," she said, her voice dropping a little. I actually laughed, waiting for her to say she was joking. She didn't. "Hallway seating," she repeated, and gestured with her clipboard toward the back of the hall. I followed her hand and saw it. A small, lonely folding table was shoved against the wall, right next to a pair of swinging service doors. A small trash can was tucked beside it. From that spot, I could see the entire ballroom through the glass. Every sparkle, every laugh, every happy face. But I couldn't hear it properly, and I couldn't be a part of it. There was a wall between us, a real one made of glass, and another one made of years of being ignored. I set my silver gift down on the table and stared through the glass. Inside, Laya was raising her glass for a toast, laughing. My mom was adjusting her veil, beaming with pride. Outside, I sat in a cold draft and told myself the same lie I'd been telling for years. It's fine. You don't need them. But the truth was a heavy weight pressing on my chest. Maybe I didn't need them, but that didn't give them the right to treat me like I didn't exist. I tried to make myself small, to disappear into the background like I always did, but the hallway wasn't quiet. Staff members kept pushing through the service doors, wheeling bins of melting ice and empty trays. They laughed amongst themselves, ignoring me. Every time the door swung open, I caught a burst of music and a flash of the beautiful party inside. I saw the chandeliers glittering, the dresses swaying, and my mother's hand resting on Laya's shoulder like a crown. Then the laughter from inside shifted. I looked up and saw Laya walking toward me. She had her bouquet in one hand and her veil was trailing behind her like smoke. She stopped just on the other side of the glass door. Two versions of my sister were reflected in the glass. One was the adored bride inside, and the other was the one staring at me outside. She looked me up and down. "Well," she said, tilting her head, "looks like they finally figured out where you belong." I blinked. Sure, I had heard her wrong. What is that supposed to mean? She gave me that half smile I knew so well from childhood. It was the smile she always used right before she took something that was mine. "Guess you don't count," she said. The words were so simple, so calm, that it took a second for their sharpness to cut me. Guess you don't count. Like it was a simple math problem, and I was the wrong answer. For a second, I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight and dry from swallowing too much pride over too many years. Behind her, the photographer was calling, "Bride! We need you back in the shot!" But Laya didn't move. She was waiting for me to react. She wanted me to cry, to beg, to make a scene and prove her point that I was just dramatic, Amber. I didn't give her what she wanted. I just looked at her, my face calm, until her smile started to twitch. "You know," I said, my voice quiet but clear, "there's always been space for both of us. You're the one who keeps shrinking it." Her eyes narrowed. "Oh, please, Amber, not everything is about you. This is my day. You could at least pretend to be happy for once." I let out a small laugh that sounded like air escaping from a balloon. You made sure I couldn't even sit in the same room. What exactly am I supposed to be celebrating? For just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Fear, maybe. Then she straightened up, lifting her chin. "You always twist things. Maybe Mom was right. You make everything difficult." The word Mom hit me harder than I wanted it to. I pictured that brown notebook again. "I'm not difficult," I said. "You just never like that I see things the way they really are." She rolled her eyes. "You sound just like Dad. Pathetic and bitter. Face it, Amber, nobody needs your approval. Not here, not ever." Then she turned on her heel, her perfume filling the air around me, and walked back to her perfect party. I watched her go, her white gown brushing the floor, and I felt the familiar sting of tears behind my eyes. But this time it was different. This time the burn felt clean. It felt like fuel. When the door closed behind her, I looked down at the small silver box on my table, the gift I had chosen with so much care. I traced the ribbon with my finger once. Then I picked it up and slipped it into my bag. If they didn't want me inside, fine. But I wasn't leaving empty-handed. Not this time. For a while I just sat there, my fingers pressed against the smooth edge of the box inside my bag. I could hear the muffled beat of the music. It was time for their first dance. I could imagine it perfectly. My mom wiping a happy tear, my dad clapping awkwardly, Laya basking in the spotlight. The center of everyone's attention. It was the same scene I had watched my whole life from the edges. But edges can be sharp. I stood up slowly. My reflection in the glass panel looked calm and composed. Maybe even graceful if you didn't look too close. Inside my bag, the silver gift felt much heavier than it should. It wasn't just a present anymore. It was proof. Proof that could shatter the perfect image Laya had built out of lies. 3 weeks earlier, I had run into one of Laya's old co-workers in Boston. We got lunch, and what started as small talk turned into a confession. The co-worker told me that Laya had been bragging for months about marrying Noah. She said Noah was sweet but naive. A few fake tears, Laya had told her friends. And I get the house, the money, the last name. She had laughed about it. My coffee had gone cold as I listened. I hadn't planned to do anything with that information. Not until today. Before I left the hallway for good, I didn't walk toward the exit. I walked back toward the ballroom entrance. There was a big table piled high with wedding gifts. The wedding planner was distracted, fussing over a flower arrangement that was starting to wilt. This was my chance. I moved quickly and quietly. I slid the small silver box out of my bag and placed it right on top of the pile of gifts labeled Talia and Noah. My handwriting on the tag was neat and clear. Inside that box, on top of a beautiful crystal photo frame, was a folded note. Under the note were printed copies of the text messages her coworker had shown me. Screenshots and receipts. It wasn't a threat. It was just the truth, packaged and delivered. I stepped back from the gift table and checked my reflection. One last time in a mirror on the wall. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady and calm in a way that felt strange and powerful. I straightened my wine-colored dress, turned, and finally walked toward the exit. The Vermont evening hit me with a rush of cold, clean air. The lake shimmered under the resort lights, but it didn't look beautiful to me anymore. It just looked cold. I could hear the faint sound of clapping and cheering from inside. They were cheering for a dance I no longer cared to see. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I felt solid. I felt real. I reached the parking lot, the crunch of the gravel under my heels sounding like a period at the end of a sentence. There was no dramatic goodbye, no big speech. I just got into my car and closed the door. The sound was quiet and final. As I started the engine, I looked back once at the glowing windows of the ballroom. I could see silhouettes of people moving behind the glass. I whispered to myself, "Let the truth find its way." Then I put the car in drive and pulled away. I didn't drive far. I stopped my car in a dark part of the parking lot where I could still see the ballroom. I turned off the engine and waited. I didn't know what would happen, or when, but I knew something would. Back inside the ballroom, the party was still in full swing. A saxophonist played a soft tune. Glasses clinked together for toasts. The crowd was pressed around Laya and Noah on the dance floor. Laya glowed in her heavy white gown, the picture of perfection she had rehearsed for months. Noah spun her around, and camera flashes made everything look golden. From outside, through the tall windows, the whole scene looked like a perfect snow globe, sealed, flawless, and totally unreal. Then, someone decided it would be fun for the couple to open a gift in front of everyone. A cousin started gathering presents from the table. My silver box was right on top. Laya laughed, playing to the crowd, and tugged the ribbon on the silver box. The wrapping paper fell away. She lifted the lid. Her smile didn't disappear right away. It just got stuck. She saw the crystal frame first. "Oh, how nice," she said, a little confused. Then she saw the folded note underneath. "What's this?" Noah leaned over to look. As she picked up the note, it slipped from her fingers and landed face up on the table. Noah's eyes caught the screenshots before she could snatch them back. He frowned, his brow furrowing as he started to read the text messages printed in pale blue bubbles. A single sentence seemed to jump off the page. "He's so easy to handle. Cry a little and he buys anything I want." The music didn't stop all at once. It just got quieter, like someone was slowly turning down the volume. The violinist missed a note. Laya's fingers began to shake. This is a lie. Someone's trying to," she stammered. Noah didn't answer her. He just kept reading, his face getting paler with each page. Each line was worse than the last. There were jokes about tricking him into signing a prenup, and plans to move my parents into their guest house once she had his money. The same smirk she had given me in the hallway was now frozen on her face, but it looked brittle and wrong now. "Who sent this?" Laya hissed, her voice low and angry. Her eyes scanned the crowd looking for me. But I was long gone. Her mother-in-law, Victoria, a woman who carried herself with a lot of authority, had been watching from across the room. She heard a bridesmaid whisper my name. "Amber Hayes." Victoria's expression hardened. She walked across the dance floor with slow, certain steps. "I think you should read the rest before you start blaming anyone," she said to Laya, her voice cold. "These messages were forwarded to me this morning from a stylist you hired. Apparently, you sent them in the wrong group chat." Laya's face lost all its color. "That's not possible," she cried. Noah's voice was low and shaking. "It's real, Laya. The dates match. These are your words." He turned to the final page. It was a photo of a text message Leia had sent. It read, "The house will be mine by Christmas." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd of guests. People pulled out their phones. The photographer lowered his camera, unsure what to do. Someone whispered, "Oh my God," loud enough for everyone to hear. Leia lunged for the papers, trying to grab them and tear them up. "You can't show people that." Victoria stepped between her and the papers. "You showed it yourself, sweetheart," she said. "You just didn't mean for everyone to see it." That was when the screaming started. It wasn't a loud scream at first. It was more like the sound of air leaving a body too fast. Leia stumbled back, and the long train of her wedding gown caught under her own high heel. "No, you don't understand. He's lying. My sister, she did this." She was pointing at the door, toward where I had been. "Amber planted those. She's jealous. She's always been—" "Stop." Noah's voice cracked through the room like a whip. The single word made everyone jump. "You did this," he said, his voice trembling with anger and hurt. "You humiliated her today, and you thought no one would ever see who you really are." Every single person in the room was staring at them now. The DJ turned the music off completely. Leia's perfect day was dissolving right in front of her, and she was completely falling apart. She spun around looking for our parents. "Do something," she yelled at them. My mother, Maggie, stood near the head table, pale and stiff as a statue. Her champagne glass was shaking in her hand. My father just looked at the floor, his lips pressed together in a tight line. For the first time ever, neither of them jumped to her defense. They were frozen. "You knew," Noah said quietly to Leia, his voice breaking. "You knew exactly what you were doing." Then, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. He set it on the table next to the printed messages. "This is an annulment petition," he said. "I already signed it." Leia stared at the paper like it was a snake about to bite her. "You can't, Noah! You can't humiliate me like this in front of everyone." "I'm not humiliating you, Leia," he said, his voice now flat and tired. "You did that yourself." Someone in the back of the room turned off the main music speakers. The ballroom fell into a silence so deep you could hear the buzz of the lights. And then came the sound that all the guests would remember for years, the sound of crystal shattering as Leia threw the photo frame onto the marble floor. "She's behind this! Amber is behind all of it!" she screamed, her voice cracking. Victoria, Noah's mother, let out a slow breath. "Funny," she said, looking Leia right in the eye. "The only thing your sister did was tell the truth." Outside, sitting in my car, I saw the lights in the ballroom flicker as people moved around frantically. I couldn't hear every word, but I heard that first sharp scream. It echoed across the lake. Then I heard the thud of a chair tipping over. It was the sound I had been waiting for my whole life. Not because I was cruel, but because it was the sound of closure. It was the sound of the truth finally being heard. I put my hand on the steering wheel. My heart was calm. I thought about the hallway, the smell of lilies and bleach, the squeak of the folding chair. It all started with the seat by the trash cans. It ended with the truth laid bare for everyone to see. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just whispers, "Now they see you." I turned the key. The headlights washed over the gravel, and I drove away from the sound of my sister's perfect world collapsing. By the time I reached Boston, the sky was starting to get light. The highway signs blurred past my window. The hum of the tires was steady and low, like white noise after years of shouting I had learned to ignore. My phone buzzed again and again in the cup holder. 16 missed calls from my mom, 3 from my dad, 1 from a number I didn't know. I didn't check any of them. The quiet in my car was worth more than any of their explanations. When I walked into my apartment, it smelled like coffee and rain. The city was waking up outside my window. I hung my wine-colored dress on the back of a chair and looked at it. It was still flawless, untouched by the chaos of the night. It looked like a piece of armor I hadn't even known I was wearing. A new text appeared. It was from my mom. "Please answer. Amber, we didn't know." She always said that when things went wrong. We didn't know. But she had known. She knew every time she told me to be quiet. Every time she laughed at Leia's jokes at my expense. Every time she said, "You're fine." I put my phone face down on the counter and opened my laptop instead. A map of Maine filled the screen. I picked a small coastal town I'd never been to and clicked book. A week by the water sounded like peace. For the first time in my life, silence didn't mean I was being ignored. It meant I was free. At my sister's wedding, I was seated by the trash cans. This morning, I'm sitting by a river. The same silence, but a completely different meaning. Sometimes the loudest revenge isn't a scream. It's the sound of your own footsteps, walking away and never looking back.